Early, when she does, we will recognize her. But let us go ahead and begin on time, and we welcome everyone who is watching, be it here direct, and we welcome our fine guests from Oregon, or whether you're watching us on LULAC Facebook. Let me first begin by, of course, sharing with our esteemed friends from the far west how much we are with you in the devastation and now the recovery work ahead, and to formally speak on behalf of the League of United Latin American Citizens. Es mi gran honor, my great honor, to welcome our national president, Domingo Garcia. Señor Presidente.
Yes, welcome to our LULAC Town Hall meeting regarding the devastating fires that are impacting our community throughout the Northwest, especially there in Oregon, Washington, and Northern California. We have been on top of that through our members. Cecilia has done a great job there in Oregon, Diana Perez in Washington State, as well as our California directors. But we've seen the impact on regular people. We've had press conferences where we've seen people who have lost everything there in Talent, I believe was the name of the town, Oregon. And people who sometimes just a trailer home was their house, and they lost that trailer and everything in it, and basically just have the clothes on their back and whatever they would put it in a car. These people need immediate help. And what LULAC is concerned about is making sure that we get everything from housing vouchers, that FEMA gets involved and brings housing to the people that are basically homeless right now, food vouchers and support, irregardless of immigration status, and making sure that these people are given the assistance they need right now to get back on their feet and be able to go back to some type of normal job situation. When we're looking at the wildfires and the impact, and now if you're homeless and winter is coming now, we're just, we're in October, we're gonna be in November, December, start gonna get cold. We need to make sure that this is done immediately before we have any further reductions in the assistance, and that means immediate help. So
thank you.
Look forward to working with everybody, and welcome everybody to our LULAC meeting.
Thank you, thank you. And the governor has just arrived. We welcome her, Representative Marsh. In a moment, we will recognize you more fully. I'd like to turn to our National Chief Executive Officer, Sindy Benavidez.
Thank you so much, David, and to all of our leaders who are on this town hall. Thank you for making time to talk about this very important issue. To my sister en la lucha, to Representative Teresa Alonso Leon, we go way back, hermana, and I'm so happy that you represent our community so well as Representative Marsh. And I want to acknowledge Governor Brown. Thank you for being an ally to our community. And I would say that, as we look at the Latino community growth in Oregon, we know that we're over 12% of the population, and since 2000 we've grown by 72%. What we see as a national Latino civil rights organization across this country that represents over 41 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico, is that oftentimes our Latino community is invisible. But we know that Latinos are essential workers. They are 5 out of 6, in fact, have to leave their houses every single day to work and get paid. And I know that even with COVID-19, we are over-indexing in terms of cases of infections as well as death. And what this points to is the fact that, as Surgeon General Adams has stated, 5 out of 6 Latinos, again, have to leave their houses every single day to work and get paid. We are the farm workers. We are the meatpacking workers. We are the essential workers who are keeping the American economy going and allowing so many of us, me, myself included, to be at home and not have to leave my house and be exposed to COVID-19. I would just add that it's so important that we look at this as a multi-layer approach in terms of what can the local governments do, Phoenix, and also Talent, Oregon, where our Latino community has been impacted at the state level with Governor Brown leading at the helm, and with our state legislators, but also at the federal level. And the fact is, David, what we're not seeing is the money coming into the Latino community at levels that are disproportionately lower than other communities that have been impacted. And so this conversation is really to center on the Latino voice, uplift the struggles that we see happening in the Latino community, and continue as a national civil rights organization to protect and defend our comunidad, nuestra comunidad, across this country, including in the great state of Oregon. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, our CEO, Sindy Benavides. We now welcome the Honorable Governor from the great state of Oregon, Kate Brown. Governor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for having me here today. And Sindy, thank you for your wonderful comments. I have to say thank you to the Oregon League of the United Latin American Citizens for putting together this town hall. I think it's critically important that when we are dealing with catastrophic effects of events like wildfires, that everyone knows that we're not doing this alone, that truly we are all in this together, and that specifically, I know that by working together, we can build a better Oregon for everyone. So I look forward to stronger and better partnerships moving ahead. Certainly, along with COVID-19, the wildfires burning throughout our state have compounded existing systemic hardships for our Latino, Latina, Latinx, and Oregon's historically underserved communities. But I believe very strongly that we have the opportunity to come back from all of this stronger by centering our Black, Indigenous, Latino, Latina, Latinx, people of color communities, and our tribal communities at the forefront of our work. So this afternoon, what I'd like to do is highlight some resources that may be available for you and your families. For families or households who are undocumented or have mixed immigration status, you may still be eligible for FEMA assistance. I know that there are concerns around the public charge, and I have asked my staff to evaluate these concerns. At this point, according to the current public charge rule, emergency disaster relief is not considered a public charge. Also, here in Oregon, we are offering disaster unemployment assistance benefits, DUA, and these benefits are available to those unemployed as a direct result of the Oregon wildfires in Clackamas, Douglas, Jackson, Klamath, Lane, Lincoln, Lynn, and Marion counties, and who are not eligible for any other unemployment benefits. So, and our employment department is prioritizing the claims of people who are impacted by the fire, regardless of what type of claim they are filing. So I want to encourage folks to visit oregon.gov/EMPLOY/disaster for more information on how to apply, including locations for picking up paper applications, answers to frequently asked questions, and more. But before I hand it off to the moderator for the panel discussion, I wanted to give you an update and more information on the COVID-19 situation in Oregon and how we can work together to keep ourselves, our families, and our neighbors safe from the virus. Many of our families are on the front lines of this pandemic as healthcare providers, agricultural and custodial workers, business owners, and in food processing. These, as we all know, these workers are absolutely the backbone of our economy. And so here in Oregon, we believe it's essential to support these workers who find themselves in situations where they are on the front lines and more likely to be infected simply by going to work. That's why we created and then invested in a quarantine fund. We invested $10 million in it to ensure that our agricultural workers can seek care, get treatment, isolate, and quarantine. So please, there are still dollars available. Please continue to apply for the support. We also have a temporary paid leave program for workers who do not have paid time off for COVID. If you meet all of these eligibility requirements, you are eligible for a $120 per day payment up to 10 working days for the time you need to quarantine or isolate. You can apply online or please call 503-947-0131. You also may have heard that we anticipate that Oregon's share of testing will increase substantially over the next weeks. We expect to see roughly 80,000 rapid antigen tests per week. The Oregon Health Authority, who oversees our testing guidelines, is expanding who has access to testing, and it will include all those who have close contacts with people who have been infected, regardless of whether or not you're having symptoms. It will also, honestly, we are going to prioritize our most vulnerable communities, such as our migrant and agricultural workers, our communities of color, and our seniors. So please, 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 we want you to feel safe in answering calls from contact tracers. Your information is strictly confidential. It won't be shared with other agencies. And certainly our contact tracers will ask you if you need an interpreter in a language other than English, ask about symptoms, check in to see if you need food, support, resources, a place to stay, or other supports to monitor your symptoms and needs. And they will not ask you about your immigration status, social security number, or charge you anything. So please answer the call if you get a call from a contact tracer so you can keep yourself and your family safe. Let's see. Also, along with all of these services, want to remind you that we can prevent the spread of COVID by working together. And the 3 W's, wear your mask, watch your distance, and wash your hands. I know it's a really challenging time, not only for our state, but for the entire country. And we need all of us working together to comply with the safety protocol. I know that the only way out of this crisis is through it, and we're only going to get through it by working together. So please, please, please stay safe out there. Please don't hesitate to call if you need assistance, and let's get all of our families the help and the services they need, but particularly those impacted by the wildfires. So thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate that. And we do this kind of an embrace from afar. But thank you. Thank you so much. And Governor, please know on behalf of our national president and our national chief executive officer, and also our state director, Cecilia Giron, LULAC stands ready to work with you in the economic recovery. We want to be a part and have a seat at the Economic Recovery Commission that you're establishing. Please know we stand ready to align ourselves with your valuable work and leadership. Thank you again.
Thank you. Abrazos y besos.
Gracias. Un gran placer y un gusto. Nos vemos pronto. We did know that the governor had an extremely tight schedule, but we do appreciate her having joined us. Señor Presidente, you've heard, before I go to our state representatives, the welcome from our governor in Oregon. Your reaction to what she outlined. She says there is help for people irrespective of status, and yet we know there are people who are fearful of going out. What do you say to our representatives and our leaders of Oregon in terms of how we engage those servicios with people really trusting enough to come out?
I appreciate the governor's candor and the fact that she mentioned specifically that the tracers will not be asking for the status of the immigration status of the people they're contacting. That is a very pleasant surprise. And that's also progressive thinking, because it does help people get support. It does keep the COVID from spreading, especially in this situation. And so I appreciate the governor's policies. I'm actually reading some of them here on the chat as we're talking. Yes. And catching up on that. And so we look forward to continuing to work with her. And with Cecilia there, I think the local LULAC councils, if they can help get the word out in English and Spanish to our members and to the community, that these programs and this support is out there and that their immigration status will not matter. That's important.
Thank you. Thank you, Señor Presidente. Cecilia, I hope you'll take up the governor's willingness to accept our request to be part of the Economic Recovery Commission. I want to turn now to our elected state representatives and then the leaders of various community-based organizations, including Linda Castillo, who is here, Anthony Veliz, who is here. May I please turn to Representative Pam Marsh? We thank you for being here, and our deepest condolences for the pain and suffering that the Oregonians have suffered through this disaster. It's been terrible.
Indeed. Just to situate you, my district is in southern Jackson County, where the communities of Talent and Phoenix and
Yes.
rural Oregon have lost 2,500
Yes.
housing units, including 1,800 manufactured homes, which were largely populated by modest and low-income members of the community, lots of Latin American citizens, families. Our local school district has had 700 children who have lost their homes. So we're in shock and trying to respond to it. Appreciate the chance to connect and talk with all of you today.
And we will cover some questions that have been prepared for you. Thank you, Representative Marsh. I want to turn also to Representative Teresa Alonso Leon, who has been a chief advocate for many years for education, healthcare, immigrant rights. Please, Representative Alonso Leon, begin wherever you would like, but I would like to ask you, how are the children doing? Their education is so important to us.
Thank you, David. Thank you, LULAC, for this invitation to participate in this conversation. For those of you who don't know me, I represent District 22, which is Woodburn through the north part of Salem. More in my area is actually mostly rural, but also have a part of the Salem area. I'm the first Indigenous immigrant Latina legislator in the history of the state to represent my district and the state. I'm very proud of representing my community. Anthony is actually one of my constituents. I want to thank LULAC for hosting us this afternoon and inviting me. 2020 has not been friendly to our community. COVID-19 hit us extremely, extremely hard. And not only that, we had that as a backdrop to then having the fires. And unfortunately, as you all have been discussing, it has disproportionately impacted our communities of color, particularly our Latinos, our farm workers. I come from farm worker background. My parents are still working on the farm as we speak. And they were one of the people who were impacted by the bad air pollution as what occurs when fires happen. My district, or I should say my county, also had fires. And one of the things that, that I encouraged and pushed and made sure it happened is that not only from the pandemic, but also in the wildfires, is that our state step up and make sure that we have multilingual information being shared and dispersed among our communities across the state.
And I want to know if our children are getting taken care of, Representative.
Yes, and as well, and as the chair of the education committee, education is incredibly important. Our kids are incredibly important to me. People ask me if I have children. I tell them that God didn't gift me with bearing children, but that means that Oregon's kids are my kids.
There you go. I want to thank you, and I'll come back to you. I also want to turn to community leaders, because in this effort, as our CEO pointed out, it takes everyone, all layers to participate. Linda Castillo is with us this afternoon. She is the chair of the Oregon Commission on Hispanic Affairs. Please forgive me for looking away, but I get questions to my right and to my left. So please know I'm attending to those as well. There are people in the audience who will want to ask questions. Ms. Castillo, I want to give you the floor for an introductory set of remarks.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for inviting us, LULAC, to this important conversation, to join this table with our community members, with Representative Marsh, Representative Alonso Leon. It's really very timely. We at the Oregon Commission, our members are appointed by the governor, and we have 9 members, and many of these members are in different parts of Oregon. And one of our commission members, Jonathan Chavez Baez, also actually lives in Ashland, and it was sharing regular reports with us of what was happening in Talent and in Phoenix. And it's, it's just so completely devastating and really difficult for us to wrap our heads around how devastating it's been for our families. But we've really been looking at things on the ground, and communities have been pulling together. We have local communities who put together resource, El Tapatío restaurant, using their parking lot to really be a hub for all of these kinds of needs that family might have. Firefighters from Mexico came and joined our firefight force, which is amazing. But the bottom line is that we are at 2 strikes of 3 major incidents. We have had COVID, which has really been very devastating to our community, particularly our agricultural and migrant workers. We are 13% of the population, and yet our population is 38% COVID positive. There are some counties, such as Washington County, which there is a high agricultural community, is at 50% COVID positive. And now we have the wildfires. And I think the main thing that I'm really interested in is the improvement of an emergency strategy for our Latino community, because the 3rd strike is an earthquake. We have been hearing about the huge earthquake that is pending. That will devastate our community completely. And if we don't have a really efficient and multilingual Spanish and indigenous language emergency response system, we will not get that information. In this case with the wildfires, particularly in the mobile homes, it was neighbors informing other neighbors. Yes. Look, your house is on fire. They didn't get the pre-notice.
I want to come back and I want to drill deeper with you on that. Please help me, because I also want to get a question into Representative Marsh, if I may, before you leave. But Anthony, you and Cecilia still, I want to give you a chance to make some introductory remarks, and we'll come back and everybody will have a moment. Please, Anthony. You, of course, and forgive me, but you are the president, or the chair rather, of the Oregon Latinx Leadership Network, known as OYEN. Please continue.
Exactly. Thank you. First of all, again, Mr. Garcia, Ms. Benavides, and Mr. Cruz, for all of your work and your service. We greatly appreciate that. Anthony Veliz, again, founder of OYEN, and I currently serve on the State Board of Education, and I'm a former school board and city councilor here in Woodburn, Oregon. My family arrived here in 1946. My grandparents from McAllen, Texas, and my other set of grandparents from Toppenish, Washington. And so we're 5 generations in. But I just would say, just in my opening remarks, that I am just a humble servant who's carrying the torch of a movimiento that started way before me, generations before me. And what OYEN is really is just the next step in the galvanization of the Latino community of Oregon, the collective of a group of leaders that are on this call with me and many, many others. And really what the spirit of OYEN is really to use our collective efforts and experiences. As it relates to the fire, I just want to give a shout out to Frank and Leslie Garcia, who are pillars in our community. And, OYEN doesn't just talk the talk, we walk the walk, and they led a caravan of Latino leaders, behavior and mental health specialists, legal experts, attorneys to Southern Oregon to do what we can. So I just wanted to say that, and I'm just a humble servant in this whole process. Thank you.
We all are, but thank you, Anthony. We welcome you. Cecilia, you're the chair of LULAC. You're the president there in Oregon. A big lift right now. You've heard the opening remarks. I do have a question for the representatives, but I want to give you an opportunity to respond.
Thank you very much, all of you guys, for being here with us. As you heard from a representative from representatives, community leaders, as well as our governor, that the work that we would love to continue doing is the collaboration in action efforts as we continue with the recovering. A lot of resources are still not into the hands of our community. And also, we would love to be present when the decisions are being made for our communities of color or indigenous communities, people that are not that are afraid to get those resources. As you know, some of you have mentioned that, yes, there are resources, but a lot of our communities that have mixed status are afraid of accessing those resources, particularly when it comes from federal funding, because we don't have the understanding of what implicates the public charge. And so that is one piece. And we urge that LULAC is also part of the process of the long-term recovery. Right now, we need emergency housing. That's priority number one that we're hearing from our Southern Oregon communities. Emergency housing. We have 0 or below access to affordable housing. Also, the housing market has rise up. Some of our families are living on hotels, and the charge to live in a hotel it has went up. Some of these families are paying over $2,000
Like buying a house
within a month to pay for their to have a roof on their table for them and their children.
So let me pick up there, Cecilia, and I'll come back to you. Representative Marsh, I know your schedule is extremely tight, but before you leave, know that we say not from our teeth out, as we say back in Texas, but because we're with you. How can we support your efforts as a state representative to do more than simply talk? Here, before this audience, what can we do to engage more fully with you and be partners in the recovery?
Well, the first thing we have to do is just continue to tell the story. And I think, frankly, we've done a pretty good job of that so far. We've had great press, really moving stories up in the metro area. And since so much of the political center, as well as the population, sits up in the metro area, that's really important. But what we've had here, I mean, what is on our hands is a humanitarian crisis, basically. And you all, many of you have spoken to that. We have thousands of people displaced. If there's 2,500 residential units, let's assume there's 5,000 people that have been displaced. Many of those, again, are members of our Latinx community. They are also seniors. They are modest and low-income people. If we do not, we've got to be able to find an intermediary place for people to be safe for the next, I'm going to say 2 years while the community starts to rebuild. 2 years. And then in the long term, and this is really critical, we need to have, and someone said it, we need to have the voices of those communities really helping us guide redevelopment, because we need to make sure that what we put out on the ground actually meets the needs of the communities that we wish to be there. So helping us tell the story and keeping the state's focus on the ongoing crisis here will be important. You know, we've had, it is hard for me to believe that we've only been doing this for a month, because it feels like we've been doing this for a year. Tremendous things have happened in a month. We've had all this adrenaline and people have stepped up and we've had donation centers and many different funds. But the fact is we're in step one of a very long process here. And we need to continue to tell the story and keep people's attention on it so that we have investment available when real redevelopment takes place, because that's how we will keep people in the community, is if we actually help them tangibly to be here.
I so appreciate that you brought up those very practical application terms. And one of our viewers says, be sure that when we talk about the voices that we include the indigenous Mesoamerican language as well. We want to be inclusive of all cultures and all people. Thank you. Is there another closing remark, Representative Marsh, before you leave? Please know LULAC is here to work with you. We are about action.
I am extraordinarily grateful to that. We are going to need all the partnerships and support. This is the work of the next 5 or more years in this community. And we want to make sure that all of the members of the community who have been part of Talent in Phoenix and Ashland continue to be part of it. We value those neighbors, and we are going to have to be extremely deliberate and intentional in order to make that happen.
Thank you, Representative Marsh. We wish you a safe journey wherever you go.
Here.
Señor Presidente Domingo, you issued a call out day one for FEMA, for the governors. You called them out. You said, let's not talk about it, let's deliver it. And you said, where are the houses? Where is the aid? I still hear that it's not quite there yet. What would you say today?
It's urgent. We need to get that support and the help now. If you know, we've put in the calls, we've put in the letters. I know our CEO Sindy has followed up, and as well as our local leadership, and we're just not seeing the action fast enough. And that's our concern. That it's, you know, we can't wait for mañana. Mañana's too long. It has to be now. It needs to be ASAP.
Thank you. Juan Carlos Valle with LULAC says that there are 496,000 Latinos there in Oregon. Sindy Benavides, as I turn to you and to Linda Castillo before going back to our representative Alonso Leon, your reaction to what you've heard thus far from the governor. She says there are services, there are ways, don't be afraid. Is it enough to get our people out to come out of the shadows to say, acepto la ayuda?
I would say, David, that part of the challenge that we have ahead of us is that, our community is experiencing compounded trauma. Not only are we living through a global pandemic with our community is disproportionately impacted, but we're living in America where in the last 3 to 4 years, our ethnicity has been used against us as a weapon against us, as we saw in El Paso, and as we see the hate crimes increase across the years, specifically targeting Latinos. I think more than that, David, the message that I would want to send to folks tuning in, folks who are listening, is that as you see price gouging occurring, please let us know. If there's hotel chains that are trying to take advantage of our community, let us know, because we are here to protect and defend our community. And, we will go after them, right? Like, we will make sure that we publicly go after these companies that are benefiting from the plight of our community. And, we are happy not only to, write letters, but also do public statements and get the media on top of covering these stories that are so important. Again, oftentimes seeing, how a federal government has had a really slow reaction to helping our Latino community, whether it's Puerto Rico and now Oregon, or seeing FEMA slowness being really slow and having these really resources getting to the community. And, to Governor Brown, obviously this is an effort that takes all of us. And, it's going to really take not only state government, it's going to take all the leaders that are on this call, our state elected officials, and also the community at large, along with the media, to make sure that our community understands that Oregon is a place that is safe. Oregon is a place that has their back, and that there are people like Representative Marsh and Representative Teresa Alonso Leon who are there to also advocate on their behalf. And I think for us long-term, David, is making sure that nuestra comunidad, understands that there's an election coming up first and foremost, and that we are proud, voting at massive numbers to send a larger message to individuals that we absolutely will hold them accountable.
Thank you. And I want to turn back to Ms. Castillo. And again, my public apology if I cut you off before. It's
No
that I
worries.
want to go around the room, but Ms.
No
Castillo,
worries.
your position in Oregon is so critical. You're kind of quarterbacking a lot of different movements. People who are watching are saying to me, make sure that we participate in the economic recovery, the job creation, the contracting. Is this an opportunity out of the ashes where we can support you so that you can support us? ¿Cómo la ve? What do you see?
No, absolutely. I think it's really going to take all of us. It isn't a one organization or a one person situation. We all have to unite, like we always do with familias. Our community is at this point virtually homeless, but they're not counted because they're surfing in, what they call couch surfing in other homes, their families, and they're not really counted. But it is a true crisis. And so I really think we have to address the housing situation on the short term. It can't be 2 years. We can't wait 2 years. No, it has to be in the short term. We have to figure out some contracts with some of the hotels or, some of the larger congregate housing opportunities. And granted, maybe in the Ashland area, there isn't a whole lot of that, but it may be a consideration of a relocation program for just the short term. People need to be housed. People need to get back to work. Children are even saying, I want to go to school for the sake of having some place to be.
Would you give us the commitment, and we will give it to you, that we will hire local, that we will buy local, that we will generate that money and keep it circulating among your Oregon community, Ms. Castillo?
I'm sorry, I missed that first part of your comment.
I guess I'm seeking a commitment because we want to reciprocate with you, that we're going to hire local. We're not going to bring people from out of state. We're not going to import. Hay mucho trabajo allí para la gente del pueblo. I want to make sure that I hear that from your organization.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's our absolute focus. We want to grow it here. We want to keep it here, and we want it to continue to grow here. Yes.
Representative Alonso Leon, in the area of healthcare, and I mean quality healthcare, I don't mean the little, clinica that could be very expensive and limited out here. Take a curita, no. Are the community workers, the essential workers, getting access to healthcare? And what about immigration rights? We have a viewer who was asking, asegúrame de que yo puedo recibir cuidado médico. How do we respond to that concern?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a serious question, and in the state of Oregon, we need to do better from an equity standpoint to ensure that we have affordable and accessible healthcare. That is a constant challenge. Right now, about 95% of Oregonians have access to health insurance, but that means that there's 5%, including our undocumented folks who don't have health insurance. And that is something that we, especially me, is working really hard to make sure we change in the state of Oregon. When I became a legislator, I advocated to be on the healthcare committee because we didn't have a voice that spoke on equity to make sure that we were addressing the needs of our families. I often share my personal story as a migrant farm worker, and I think it's resonating a poco a poquito. But we're a legislature that is predominantly white, that is removed from the needs of a lot of our gente, and that is something that I am working on. I have been working in my first term. We helped pass a law to ensure that 100% of our kids, despite their immigration status, have access to health care. But that leaves out the adults. So tenemos más trabajo para hacer.
Más trabajo. Gracias, Representante Alonso León. Voy a regresar. Anthony, congratulations on the $5 million grant that your organization received. How will that money be used to benefit the local community, my friend?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Cruz. A great question. And we have some big buckets and big shoes to fill. But the first one is we want to get the money out to the organizations, the community-based organizations that are there, have been there working tirelessly, and then some all across the state of Oregon. Our next commitment is to distribute PPE, much needed protection to our farm workers, our undocumented, our indigenous Mesoamericans, those that need it the most, and of course, our children and families all across the state of Oregon. We also are going to do an unprecedented research project, which will basically analyze the impacts that COVID-19 and now these fires have had on our Latino community. I think that's something that's really important for Oregon, that we make we have data, right, and data-driven decisions. And then one thing that I would also, our last piece is just a very comprehensive statewide multilingual communication plan. That's something that's been that transcends. It doesn't matter if it's healthcare, education, employment. That the information is not getting down. The trickle down effect absolutely has not worked. It's a middle class, upper middle class system, and we need to get to the people that need the information the most.
Pregunta a la gente. Thank you, Anthony. Cecilia está preguntando a la gente. People are asking, can I get this help today? How can people get help today? They see this, they hear it, but they don't know where to go. Cecilia, what do we say to them?
It's very important that we collaboratively, communities that are serving our Latino community, organizations that are serving our Latino community, collaboratively come together to work in the efforts, because that's right. A lot of our community members affected not only by COVID but the fires don't know where to go for access of resources. There's organizations, particularly in Southern Oregon, that are working with the Latino community that are there working day to day with the community, like, for example, Únete or the Listo Family Literacy Program, So Healthy. And these organizations are also working with the OYEN, the Latino network that Anthony just mentioned. And we would like to collectively work together to provide those resources to the community
Eso.
in the information in their native language or multiple language for our indigenous Mesoamerican community and our Central American community, because we have a big percentage of Central Americans in Southern Oregon. We just had a LULAC partner with the Guatemalan Council from Seattle and Portland. They were there last week on Saturday, working with the community churches. Collaboratively, we need to work together to make sure that the voice of the communities are at the center of the table, where long-term recovery or emergency assistance and aid now. And that needs to be collectively in one place. And hopefully
Yo siento su pasión. Cecilia, siento la pasión. It's like I'm touching the screen. I feel your energy and your love. The beautiful thing of what I'm seeing here, también el presidente que está aquí, in Dallas, Texas, es que we all want to do it. Now, I have to ask this. I must ask this. On the front page of the Wall Street Journal, there was a little girl who lost her little bicycle. She lost all her toys. It broke my heart when I saw that. That is one of the classic pictures of devastation. And we've talked about the children, but here's what I want to ask you. So many people still want to know, why did we not get enough notice, or did we know it was coming, or did we lack in-language notification of what was coming? Help me with that. Whomever would like to. I see Ms. Castillo is nodding yes. Representante León, ¿dónde estuvo la falla? Where can we learn something here?
I think it was there, the in-language notification. I mean, the state of Oregon has an ability to translate information on their wildfires resource page. But the key one, the flash alerts, the flash emergency alerts, which anybody can sign up for, are only in English. They need to be in Spanish and many other languages. If our community would have been informed on how to do that and how to sign up, they would have gotten some notifications in their language. So I think that's one early fix that we can make. But it's true, we need to really reform the whole system to be much more responsive to Spanish, the 22 indigenous languages that are here in our state, and a platform. We don't even have radio or television stations. And so we need to develop that. We have one radio station in Phoenix, I believe, that runs from 1 to 2 p.m. Our people are working. They're not going to be listening to that radio station for 1 hour.
And now I want to turn to Sindy. We did a broadcast, Ms. Benavidez, as our CEO, and you were present, and you saw women who were lined up to use one public facility. And I'll never forget that one of the volunteers who's not here today because she had an emergency, Laura, one of our LULAC members, told me that it was humiliating, but that's all they could do. They had no other place to bathe, to wash, to take care of their necessities. We have to change that, Sindy. We heard the governor talk. We want to participate. Talk to me about how we're going to address the mental health issues for women, mothers, children. I come to you because I know that you're a mother and I know that you're a spouse, and I want to get your reaction to that.
Well, I would say, I think first and foremost, we need to take a step back, right? And I think where we get it wrong, and I say we in terms of government, having been part of government before, is that it's not enough to translate information if it's not culturally relevant, and also to meet our community where they are. And the fact is that 1 in 3 Latinos do not have access to technology and broadband. So what does this mean? This means that we have to be creative in terms of a text messaging campaign. This means that we have to be creative in terms of using WhatsApp. We have to be creative in terms of how we get the word out, and do it old school, right? Like literally word of mouth, like recoge el teléfono and let's make some calls. And so this is where, you know, the organizer in me comes out, David, because it's so important that we remind the government that we have to absolutely meet our community where they are. And the fact is that traditionally communities of color are not only displaced, but, you know, right now what we're seeing in the middle of COVID-19, in the middle of a digital divide, is that the Latino community is experiencing a digital abyss, where our children are also being left behind in the school system, because now the homework gap is now the homework abyss. Again, you know, this is where we have to really make sure that we are uplifting those voices. But I would say, David, as a mother, as a Latina, we have to absolutely continue to pressure and also do our part, right? Like when it comes to COVID-19, doing our part and wearing our masks, not only when we go outside, but even inside of our homes, which tend to be multi-generational, inside of the cars. El otro día, you know, I was regañando a mi papi, I was jalándole la oreja because he was in a car with, you know, someone that we don't know if they had COVID-19 or not. And being in a, you know, a special population with a pre-existing condition, you know, we have to have those reminders for our community. But I would say, David, you know, the area of mental health, again, a community that is experiencing compounded trauma. And I just think of our children, right? Like our children who are seeing their parents suffer, our children who they themselves are suffering, our children who are feeling displaced and uncertainty during this time, working at all levels with the government, with the associations to make sure that these services are provided to our communities, and also to remind everyone that, you know what, there's pockets in Oregon that are not friendly to the Latino community, that are not welcoming to the Latino community. And this is where we have to continue to build that consciousness and making sure that we are pushing our agenda long term.
Y quiero que sepan, every one of you who's there on this call, that we admire the work that each of you does in the far northwest of the U.S. You have come from far away to where you are there, and we admire your leadership. Representante Alonso León, Ubaldo Hernández pregunta, is this time to talk about immigration reform? La gente indígena sigue sufriendo. We heard about trabajadores who were dropped off at a park, left there to fend for themselves. My God, these are horror stories. But as we look forward, what is that hope that you can give us? We have about 14 minutes left in the call. I want to give you an opportunity to address an issue close to your heart, which is el derecho del inmigrante, the immigrants.
Thank you, David. Absolutely. I mean, you know, I get so frustrated and disappointed with our federal government. They are not stepping up in respect to our undocumented and mixed status families. They are not a priority. Our farm workers are not a priority, pero saben que our farm workers, whether they're undocumented or come from mixed status, are feeding all of us, making sure that we have food on our tables, giving privilege to those who don't even think about where their food comes from.
So whose door do we have to go bang on right now, Representante León? Because I want some of that money to reach our people.
It is about our congressional leaders. At the state level, we unfortunately can't pass laws related to immigration. We can control state laws. We can try to do, like, for example, for us, we passed a privacy law to protect the privacy of our people in our state. But at the federal level is where a lot of the immigration decisions are being made. So I urge everybody to talk to their congressional leaders, make immigration, the immigration issue, one of the top priorities that they work on next, because it's incredibly important. We have so many people contributing to our tax system, right? They are contributing to the state's economy. And they're not recognized for all that they do. Al contrario, people
Somos los invisibles.
That's right.
Somos los invisibles. Thank you, Representante Anthony. Do you have any hope that immigration is even going to be on the radar in the next 30 some odd days or 20 some odd days? Ya estamos aquí llegando a la elección. Really? Or is it going to be, como dicen en mi barrio, nos van a parquear? I mean, what's going to happen with our issue in the next 3-4 weeks? These people can't wait. They need to eat. They need a place to stay. It's going to get cold.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, like I would just represent that's Alonso, that's like a federal, but we do have control of what we do day to day, of what our cities do, of our counties do, and our state does. And I think that's where I see our group making the biggest impact. Yeah, I always have hope. I mean, again, coming from where we all probably come from humble beginnings, there is hope. That's the only, sometimes in all this darkness, that's the light, right, that we have is just hope. So I have great hope for our community, our comunidades, but I can't get sidetracked. What I'm trying to do is tap into everybody's gift. Everybody has at least one gift, and I'm trying to tap into that one gift in a collective way and utilize everybody's talent and time and treasure to really do what we have to do in Southern Oregon that Cecilia was so passionate about, and go help our gente today. And we can't wait another minute.
Thank you, Anthony. We have 10 minutes left. Cecilia, I want to give you an opportunity as we round this entire array of speakers. The message that we can take away today in terms of no solamente hablar, pero hacer. Where do we go next? Cecilia, you're muted.
Thank you. Yes, where do we go next? I urge everyone to really collaborate to work together. As I mentioned, our familias don't have a documentation to prove. A lot of these families lost also their documentation. Therefore, we urge for the Mexican consulate to have a mobile council to go to Southern Oregon and support these families. This is a must. This is an emergency need, and a lot of the families continue to ask for that support. Also,
¿No ha ido el cónsul? ¿No ha ido el cónsul al sur de Oregón?
Not in Ashland and Talon. I know that they have been in another area, but not in Ashland and Talon that I know so far. Unless unless someone here knows that they went there. But as far as I know from my community, that we closely work together with different organizations that support this community. No, they have come to another area, part of southern, part of south of Oregon, but not in the area that has been affected. Also, we urge the Guatemalan Council to go back. They went last Saturday, but we want them to come back with a mobile unit for the families to receive their documentations and their because they will need that in order for them to get an ID. They will need a pasaporte. They will need all those documentations.
Thank you.
Families continue to struggle just having that piece of paper. So that's one thing. We need to collaboratively work together and bring those resources back to our communities that was affected in Southern Oregon. That's one. Two, we talk about mental health, but we need to make sure that the mental health that we provide to our communities are bilingual, bicultural, and in multiple languages. And we are short of mental health providers that are bilingual and are bicultural, yet that they speak multi-languages. So that is key. We need those resources from state to go back to the community. And we urge an emergency housing program or farm working low-income housing urgently to start developing in Southern Oregon. We need an emergency housing now. Those are the things that we need.
And that issue has been brought up 3 times. I think we ought to take it back as a group to those people who are going to bring it. I hope that Representante Leon will help us also give us some of that. I want to turn to Linda Castillo. Final word that you would like to share with the leadership organization that you're a part of.
Yeah, I think, we do have this challenge with the undocumented piece, and that is a federal level item. But in the local arena, we do have the ability of those of us who can to vote. And I think this is the crucial time where we cannot turn away from this at all or be apathetic. All of us that can vote need to vote. The other piece is that the state of Oregon has developed a wildfires relief fund, and that is bringing together 3 philanthropy groups. Meyer Oregon Community Fund and Meyer Memorial, maybe I said that away, Ford, and the Ford Foundation as well. And those are, funds that are pretty flexible. And I think this is a conversation with them about how to utilize those for the most critical needs, which are housing and providing the basic needs that a lot of our community does need at this point.
Thank you, Linda Castillo. And Hector Hinojosa dice, LULAC nationally, we need to advance Cesar Chavez's dream into the 21st century, and he speaks of the National Labor Relations Act and helping the workers in the agricultural area. Representante Alonso Leon, you are walking history yourself. Please give us some inspiration as we leave Oregon on this visit.
Well, I just want to say that, no nos vamos a ir, aquí nos quedamos, aquí estamos, and we're going to continue to live and thrive in our communities. But, we need more legislators of color who have the courage to run for office so we can make even more change. We have a lot of unjust laws in our state, and we need to change them, and we need to add even more laws that that support our communities. So I urge any of you who are interested in running for any leadership opportunity, whether it's city council, whether it's school board, whether it's, at the state level. Necesitamos la ayuda de todo el mundo. And for me, one of my personal goals is to diversify our legislative body at the state level. That's a dream of mine. And so it begins with—
When you mean diversify, what do you mean by that,
meaning that
representante?
right now we have a BIPOC caucus, solamente 9. We only have 9 legislators of color in the entire legislative body.
Wow.
Right. And so this is why my ask to anybody who's watching, who live in Oregon, who want to, run for office or run for a leadership position, and whether it's local, you can begin there and then move up. But we need to really have more representation at the state level. Así vamos a poder pasar, really, that's where we're gonna make big changes. In other words, we're gonna pass laws that are going to impact our state in a way that it hasn't been before. And we started with our small BIPOC caucus, pero hay mucho más trabajo para hacer. So that is, for me, I think one of the most transformational things we can do is to run for elected and appointed seats.
Thank you, Representante Teresa Alonso León. Sindy, you're pensive. There is so much before us, and yet we've seen the nation respond, one of the largest fundraising efforts LULAC has ever seen. Thank you for having supported that and led that, Sindy. What is your message to our wonderful friends in Oregon and the West who are tuned in, including Diana Perez, who says that engaging in government is so important? Our president had to leave. He had a previous commitment, but we want to hear from you in closing. Sindy Benavides, our CEO.
First and foremost, David, thank you so much for moderating this and, as always, keeping a lively dialogue. And I will tell you that, I absolutely know that the future of Oregon is bright with individuals like Representative Alonso León, with Linda and Anthony, and our LULAC State Director, Cecilia, and Diana, who is in Washington State, but very pendiente of what's happening in Oregon. And to our LULAC members who are tuning in, thank you. Thank you for, making sure that we're uplifting the voices of our community, for jumping right in when it was needing, for driving literally through the fire to try to get to our families and to get the supplies that they needed, for reporting the abuses that were happening to our farm workers so we can go after these individuals and make sure that the Department of Labor and that OSHA are taking action against the bad players and actors who are taking advantage of our community. And what I would say, and Representative Alonso is so spot on, we can't be what we can't see. And we need more Latinos running for office. And although we know that every 30 seconds a Latino in the US is turning 18, which means that about 1 million Latinos are eligible to register to vote, we need more Latinos to jump into the fire and to be at that table making those decisions. And also consider being a political appointee and serving in state government or in local government at the highest level to make sure that our voices are represented. And the truth is that as we look at the census and the many attempts to silence our voice and make us invisible, we must absolutely revel and make sure that we are counted, that the numbers show that Latinos will continue to grow, and that in fact 30 years, David, by 2050, Latino will be 130 million strong. So what this means, and everyone's paying attention for this, and that's why we see so many voter suppression efforts, is that we're growing and that the power is on our side, but it can't be on our side if we're silent and if we're not active. And so with that, the call to action for our comunidad is, one, let's be vigilant, let's be the architects of our own future, and remember that nobody's coming to help us or save us, that we ourselves must take those actions and create those spaces and those opportunities for ourselves. And as Representative Alonso mentioned, run for office. We need you in this fight.
Gracias, Sindy Benavides. Juan Carlos Valle también comentando. Marcela Alcantar, she says, and in closing, es necesario poner una implementación de política viable para abordar la definición del grupo indígena adecuadamente, para abordar, representar y crear oportunidades justas y equitativas para poder mantener nuestras raíces vivas. When I think of that, raíces vivas, we may burn at the top of the soil, right? Nos pueden tratar de ahogar, pero mientras esa raíz esté viva, Cecilia, Teresa, Linda, Anthony, Cindy, and all of you who are tuned in, we will not be perished from this earth. Entonces, los quiero agradecer tanto y profundamente. We thank each and every one of you, all who are tuned in. We thank you for your support. For the wildfires that have been out there and the victims who are recovering, give our love to each of those families and tell them we have them in our prayers. We will continue to send our aid. Que Dios les bendiga. We will see each other soon y hasta la cima. Buenas tardes.